Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to ask what's going on at GB News as they begin the sackings of presenters, including Mark Dolan, who seems less than impressed, and even Jacob Rees-Mogg has had his hours halved. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So Mark Dolan, who's been a GB News presenter for a while now, announced that he had done his last show and his services were no longer required yesterday. Today we find that Liz Webster's been sacked and now Jacob Rees-Mogg has had his hours cut. He was doing 4 shows a week, it's now going to be 2 apparently. So ironically, the one who's rich enough to lose his job gets to keep it, albeit more part-time. By the time this video is published, I don't know, maybe there'll have been another sacking, who knows. But what's going on? Well, first of all, the reasons, according to the Daily Mail from sources, are that Webster was dropped for being too woke. So if true, so much for claiming that they have a spread of views represented on the channel. Doesn't even look like a spread of right-wing views, does it? Dolan was apparently dropped because his viewing figures were supposedly pants. And Rees-Mogg has been axed, or half-axed, as a cost-cutting measure. So I guess that implies he was being paid top dollar and they can replace the 2 slots he's lost with someone who will work for a lower salary. Now, according to the article, Dolan was considered a problem because he kept flipping his position on Brexit. Now, I can well believe that many presenters on GB News have to keep shifting their position according to where they think they need to be to attract the most attention. When Dolan first started working for GB News, he promised that he'd be discussing the things important to people and that it would definitely not be boring. Well, it seems it must have been a little bit boring. But such is the cutthroat nature of the fight for ratings. Ultimately, this will be part of the channel's drive to become less costly. They must surely have abandoned any hope of actually working out a viable business model at this point. Last year, the channel made losses of over £40 million. This was way more than in 2022, where it was £30 million. And I can say why that would be to an extent. Advertising revenues have been declining for a few years now. As the economy has been battered by various pressures, I imagine advertising funding was probably the first to go for a lot of companies. And I've said it before, I can see from my own YouTube revenues, I can see a decline over the last few years, noticeably. And I know it wasn't just me, because ITV were complaining about it last year as well. But GB News have an extra problem, because they are such a rancid collection of human flotsam. There's quite a bit of consumer pressure on a lot of companies to not advertise on GB News. Indeed, there's been campaigns which have successfully persuaded quite a few companies to not advertise with them, which of course always enrages anyone who works at GB News. Nigel Farage has had a whine about that on more than one occasion. But given that advertising space is essentially an auction, if you have fewer companies bidding for that space, then the cost of winning becomes less. Add into that declining advertising spends over the past few years as well. And GB News, you can see why they're just hemorrhaging money. They've always been getting rid of, they've been getting rid of behind the scenes staff for a while now. And now they're sort of dropping presenters. You have to presume the ones on a good wage. So it looks like, although the latest figures from them we've got are the 2023, we have to assume that at the moment their 2024 losses are not looking any better. Maybe they're worse. But of course, if they replace presenters with others who are just cheaper, does that really help? Like, what if the new bloods don't get the same viewing figures? How much is the toxic messaging coming out of GB News really worth it for the owners? Because I can't imagine they enjoy shoveling tens of millions of pounds into a furnace every year. And what happens is, if over the next few years, the government toughens Ofcom up and maybe even tightens up the regulations for broadcast media in general, the owners obviously are not happy to keep throwing £40 million a year away on the channel. Otherwise, they wouldn't be running cost-cutting measures, which could result actually in lower views. If it was worth the financial hit, they'd be happy to take these losses and ensure they had the most extreme presenters doing their thing as much as possible. Is there a point at which they decide to pull the plug altogether? And if so, will it be because it's just not worth the money down the drain? Or because they'll have actually infiltrated more profitable media outlets and no longer need it? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.